Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever and wherever you're watching or listening. This is the Awesemo NHL DFS Pick Show, and I am your host, Michael Clifford, aka Slim Cliffy. Here we are, Saturday, NHL playoffs. We have games all day long, but we are going by what the DFS sites are giving us, and they're giving us a 3-game main slate starting mid to late afternoon, depending where you live in the US or Canada. So we're going to be talking about those 3 games later today. Most specifically, we won't be touching on the early game very much, obviously, because it's early in the day and smaller prize pools, fewer people playing, and all that stuff. We are brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a daily prop-based contest website where you can hop on, throw some props together across a bunch of different sports, and enter the contest that way. If you want to join, you use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, for a $100 first match bonus. There are no sharks, there are no optimizers, there is no mass entry. So all the things that might scare maybe some of the lower volume players away from the bigger DFS sites are not an issue. Over on PrizePicks, you can play 5-player lineups that can net up to 10 times your entry fee. You can use your knowledge across multiple sports with cross-sport entries. You know, it could be NBA, could be MLB. Obviously, we'll be talking NHL, whatever you are into. If you want to join PrizePicks, just download the app in the App Store or on Google Play, or just head on over to prizepicks.com. Here at Awesemo, we have Odds Shopper, a free service where we help people that are betting props or lines look for the best value across a bunch of different legal books in the United States. And you can use those tools to kind of cross-reference your PrizePicks and see what some of the best bets might be. If you want to get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum for signing up with PrizePicks, you can do so by signing up using the link in the description of this video and making a deposit at prizepicks.com. You will receive an email within 24 to 48 hours to redeem your free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So be sure, if you're a new PrizePicks customer, you can get a $100 first match bonus with the promo code Awesemo, and you can get 1 month free of Awesemo Plus Platinum by clicking through in the link of this video description. We will be talking about PrizePicks and a couple picks a little bit later in the show, likely at the end of the show. But first, we have to get to some of the games that we have today. Let's get to this first game. Colorado Avalanche, we have them with a 3.9 implied goal total. They're going into Nashville. The Predators have a 2.7 implied goal total. After a bit of a laugher in game 1, we had an overtime in game 2 where AHL goalie, third-string goalie Connor Ingram looked very, very good. He has pretty good AHL numbers going back a few years. This was a guy that was expected to at least compete for a roster spot by this point, but obviously Pekka Rinne was around until very recently. UC Saros obviously is one of the top goalies in the league. So it's not a slight against Ingram that he wasn't able to be an NHL regular. They just had deep goaltending. Obviously, with Saros injured and Riddick not playing well, Ingram starting the game today, pretty cheap as well over on DraftKings, 7,400. Not less expensive on FanDuel. It's just $7K, so very reasonable pricing for Connor Ingram here today. Obviously, we are expecting a lot of goals from Colorado. One thing to watch from the Avalanche is late in that game, they switched up their lines. They went back to their old top line of Landeskog, McKinnon, and Rantanen, and then moved Valeri Nichushkin down with Nazem Kadri. Now, Colorado top line, they get better defensively when Landeskog is there rather than Nichushkin, and that might seem kind of counterintuitive because Nichushkin is a very good defensive player as well, but sometimes players play differently depending on which lines they are on. Landeskog certainly would bring a defensive presence to align with McKinnon and Rantanen. Just watch for warm-ups because we might get a little bit of funky stuff there. We do have the Colorado top line as the top projected line on this entire slate. In fact, they're projected for about 3 more points than the next closest line, which we have in Pittsburgh too, and we'll talk about that game in a little bit. They'll be matched up against the Nashville top line. The Nashville top line has had some problems defensively, particularly down the stretch this year. Not to mention the Nashville penalty kill has generally been bad this year, average to bad. Certainly fell apart down the stretch of the regular season. They've looked good so far in this postseason, really limiting Colorado's damage, but Colorado certainly has the skills and the ability to whip around the puck and score on any given power play. So when we are looking at this game, assuming that we get Gabriel Landeskog on the top line for Colorado and Valeri Nichushkin down on the second line, I kind of do like that second line for the Avs here with Nichushkin there. One reason, it saves a little bit of money going down from Landeskog to Nichushkin. And two, people will probably chase that heavily correlated Colorado top line. If Landeskog's up there, all three guys will be on the top power play unit. And there'll be a lot of heavy ownership on that line. And Nashville's depth, again, wasn't very good during the regular season, hasn't been strong so far in the playoffs. Certainly the Ryan Johansson line, whatever that iteration has been, has looked fairly bad. So if you want to avoid what should be some heavy ownership on Colorado 1, moving down to Colorado 2 and just full stacking them, make sure you include Arturi Lehkonen in there. He's been shooting a lot, generating some expected goals at 5-on-5. I expect him to break through at some point in this series. So do like that Colorado second line as a bit more of a fillery line, assuming that's where Valeri Nichushkin starts. On the Nashville side, the Jeannot Sissons training line, outside of Nashville's top line, is by far looked like their most dangerous players. Training had a couple of decent breaks in their last game. Again, not a line that I would full stack, but if you're looking for a super cheap two-man stack, or even just one offing, Jeannot or one offing training, I think that's perfectly fine. So that's where I'm at for their forwards. On the blue line, if you're looking for blocks and such, Alexandre Carrier, I should say, is the guy to take from Nashville. He's typically their bigger shot blocker. That should play well on DraftKings, where the block bonus definitely factors in. All right, let's get to this next game. New York Rangers going into Pittsburgh. The Rangers have a 3.0 implied goal total. Pittsburgh sitting with a 2.9 implied goal total. Obviously, the story of this series is the goaltending. Igor Shesterkin, he's looked phenomenal. Again, probably the best goalie so far in these playoffs. Certainly was the best goalie in the regular season. It's not for lack of trying. Pittsburgh's offense generally has looked pretty good this series. Sometimes you just run into a goalie like that and there's nothing you can do about it. That's kind of why Pittsburgh's projection is a little bit muted at 2.9. It's not very far off from Nashville's 2.7, despite Pittsburgh having a very good offensive team. Pittsburgh has been running over pretty much anybody they're matched up against so far this series. They should see a lot of that Kreider, Zibanejad, Vetrano top line. We don't have Pittsburgh 1 coming in with very high ownership. Our ownership, by the way, it's free for anybody to view at Awesemo.com. We have free premium tools and data up on the site usually every day. We certainly have them up today. We have free ownership projections, and I'm going to share that with you guys right now. You see Jacob Markstrom coming in first. Zibanejad actually coming in second. I think that's a price. And then you see it's basically a bunch of Colorado, Calgary, in Nashville guys, with the Pittsburgh players coming in much lower owned. You see the only Pittsburgh guy coming in over 20% is Chris Letang. It seems like if you want to get a bit of a lower owned top line, like most of the top lines will be highly owned because it is just a 3-game slate. But if you want to look for some lesser ownership at a reasonable price, seeing as Brian Russ has been priced down, at least over on DraftKings, Pittsburgh 1 certainly very much in play here tonight. Just keep an eye out for Jason Zucker returning. They said he's a game time decision for the Penguins here. He played a lot with Jeff Carter when he was healthy in the first half of the season, but the key to remember there is that Evgeny Malkin was injured. Malkin did not play until January of 2022. And that's basically around when Zucker got hurt. So we don't know exactly where Zucker is going to land, and we're probably not going to know until warmups at 6:30 Eastern. So it doesn't really help because that Colorado-Nashville game will already be locked at that point. But I suspect that they're going to move Zucker to the second line, move Kasperi Kapanen down to the third line with, maybe Carter and Rodriguez, or even Carter and McGinn, and then move one of McGinn and Rodriguez down to the fourth line. So if Zucker's back, expect him to play with Malkin. And Zucker is super cheap over on DraftKings because of because of his injury. So we could get a cheap Pittsburgh second line coming in here today. But I will say I do like the Pittsburgh top line most of any line in this game. If I were going to do anything from the Rangers, it would be either the second line, Panarin, Strome, and Kopp, or some sort of power play stack. Kreider, Panarin, and Strome, something like that. Zibanejad, Panarin, and Strome. Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin, whatever you want to do. Add in Adam Fox if you want. Pittsburgh typically has had a decent penalty kill, but again, with their third string goalie net, Louis Domingue, they can't ask him to do too much. And the Rangers power play has looked pretty good so far in this series. So Pittsburgh won. Rangers power play is where I'm leaning in this game. On the blue line, we'll have to see if Brian Dumoulin returns, because Mike Matheson played about 23 minutes in the game without Dumoulin in game 2. Dumoulin's out again. I do like Matheson again in this game. He is a player that likes to jump up into the play. That's somebody that we certainly would want to use for a relatively cheap price. He could come in fairly highly owned, but a lot of players will on a 3-game slate. That's just kind of the way around it. Evan Rodriguez is an interesting player to one-off here. He's looked good in the, I've watched the entire both games. He's looked good down the stretch in the regular season. He's looked good so far in the playoffs. He doesn't get great chances because he's not playing with great players. I just hope maybe they can move him into the top 6 at some point. But he's a guy I don't mind one-offing if you need a cheap replacement. Finally, Calgary and Dallas. Been an absolute snooze fest so far. 3 goals scored in 2 games with 2 shutouts. They only have Calgary with a 3.0 implied goal total. Dallas all the way down to 2.4. The lowest on the slate, even way below Nashville. Well, not way below, but a fair bit. I have a hard time arguing with that. Both teams have really struggled to generate basically anything, whether at 5-on-5 or on the power play. Shouldn't be a huge surprise, I guess, because Calgary is an excellent defensive team. They were through the entire regular season, and a big chunk of this Dallas core went through that playoff run, that deep playoff run a couple of years ago, where they were playing very defensive hockey. So, Rick Bowness being the defensive coach that he is, it kind of makes sense that they're tightening things down a little bit. But what it has done is made that Dallas top line very, very cheap here today. They're just over 16K on DraftKings. That is a very, very cheap price for that trio. Now, obviously, they're a bit more expensive over on FanDuel. You're probably going to be paying 20K plus. So, the ownership will probably be less on FanDuel. But even on DraftKings, our early ownership run only has them coming in at around 10%. Just to bring up our free ownership here today. Again, here you see Jason Robertson, 10.2%, Roope Hintz, 12.2%, John Klingberg, 7.4%. So we're not expecting a lot of ownership on Dallas here today. So if you're looking for an even lower owned line than the Pittsburgh top line that I just talked about, the Dallas top line would be the place to go. And at times, Dallas has used some depth lines as a shutdown line. I'm not sure that they do that here today, but if they do, that could send that Dallas top line against the depth of Calgary, which is a little bit worse defensively. Not bad by any means, just a little bit worse defensively. So, if you're playing 20 max, or certainly if you're playing in the $15 something, you're going to want some of that Dallas line here today. But in sum, the line that I like most in this game is Mangiapane, Backlund, and Toffoli. They've looked the most dangerous of any Calgary line, including the top line so far in these 2 games. I have to think it's part of it is playing often against the depth from the Stars, like that Nemestikov, Seguin, Glendening line won't be very good. Raffle Ben-Gurianov could be. As I mentioned in the last show, they were pretty good in the regular season, controlling about 55% of the scoring chances when they were on the ice. But Seguin, Glendening, and Nemesnikov won't be as strong. Mangiapane, Backlund, and Toffoli coming in with a lot of ownership. So I'm not sure I would just full 3-man stack them, with a Colorado one or something like that, because you might see a lot of duplicates. But I have no problem one-offing Andrew Mangiapane or even one-offing Tyler Toffoli for anybody that wants to get a cheap player in their lineup tonight. On the Dallas side, like I said, it's that Raffle Ben-Gurianov line that I kind of like as a fillery type line here tonight. Dallas one, I think, is a good leverage play, decent leverage play here tonight. But I think if you want a two-man something from the Stars, it'd be like Raffle and Ben, or Raffle and Gurianov, something like that. Raffle has been playing very, very well so far this series. One of the few players on the Stars that actually has been. That line has looked good. So don't mind that Dallas Raffle Ben-Gurianov line. Some sort of two-man out of there if you need something cheap because you're loading up on Colorado power play or something like that. On the blue line, Dallas has basically gone to 4 defensemen. Don't mind Esa Lindell on DraftKings if you need a cheap guy that might grab some blocks. Same thing with Chris Tanev on the other side. Otherwise, if you're looking for a more expensive defenseman, I would just rather play the guy that's probably going to play, well north of 20 minutes here today, and that's Miro Heiskanen. All right, that's going to do it for this video here today. As I mentioned earlier, we have a couple prize picks to give out. We do like the over on Nazem Kadri 3.0 shots on PrizePicks. We haven't projected for 3.3 shots, so about 10% higher. His median projection is about 10% higher than what PrizePicks is offering, and obviously there's still the chance of a push in case things go horribly wrong. Staying with Colorado as well, we like the over on Mikko Rantanen, 2.5 shots. We have him also projected for 3.3, so well over that 2.5 that PrizePicks is offering. So over on Nazem Kadri, over on Mikko Rantanen, both for shot props. That'll do it for me here today. Josh is going to be back with a Sunday Mother's Day special tomorrow. He will be doing a show for the slate. He will be also doing a show on Monday, I believe, and then I will be back on Tuesday, pending whatever happens in these series. But we have a full day of hockey today, everybody. So go and enjoy those games, and good luck tonight.